dabar jibi gui xiaozi jiru xiaola qiang zai lo dorji jiang de lo naro tangman me tao fa zhi jibian gu ga zhi sum dian zai yue la me xia zai ju na ma ye dam ju yong la zuru ba de su dao ju qin jie lo tene ta nga zu tere wa ka zang ti yin ba na wa qiu kong zhu ba se ba ti gang tere yin ba na wa qiu kong zhu ba 我听对天呢，天气吧，上边没吃，别煮下天南是看得上是呢。什么天气吧，秋季过，那晚天气吧，秋口，这些等等那些人民天气才那种多。我这什么的秋口的上班的，我秋口天那晚这的秋口天我那我的是的。我这同他们今天那些天不也没吧的是，那晚什么的那晚秋口那晚。连三天这干嘛这可能做穷也没办法。我听对的是种吧的，三节长当三节长当刚没弄完，说他三节长当中怕的，起老天就痛，后来是大在起老我说弄完就有了刚才嘛讲了说弄完吃这么着有点吃说的，他这年什么痛说的，我这弄完上去没着了。现在真的这些的年，现在最多也需要么了，从口上上去抽不了么了。这个嘛着这买些的真的做，真的注意上对的，但是那么这年个都交通么什么什么，这是全球了吧？这是让我这了让我买些比，有那电板这边去吧，出那些吧，这当然一边那些人没从那用。 我的那些也没把它下个人，我说说有办这呢，送嘛，买意思，现在才到那办意思，我的你嘛你们俩买几个那搞了在那些你不看下有办着，这里买的这里你们俩提的说几块钱上，这里也是这买的是，汤不公的可能这有买的是，看的是原来也没把的是是吧？那些也没把，所以。
So yesterday we were in the section of pointing out appearances as the Dharmakaya. And so then there's a quote from the incomprehensible co-emergent tantra. The co-emergent nature of mind is the Dharmakaya. And the co-emergent appearances are the radiance of the Dharmakaya. This is the co-emergent indivisibility of mind and appearances. So what appears on the what seems to be the outer level is only the reflections of the Dharmakaya or the lights of the Dharmakaya. In other words, of the mind, appearances of the mind. The appearances all come from the mind, and there are no separate appearances from the mind. And then thus appearances are just the unceasing self-radiance of the nature of mind, not recognizing itself, but grasping at appearances as real, mind displays as erroneous appearances. And so what we see on the outer level, all the colors, red, blue, green, and white, and so on, all of this is the appearance of the mind, the radiance of the mind. And when one understands that, sees that, there is no difference between there being an enemy or a friend and so on. All these appearances do not really exist as what they appear. But if we don't know that, we are confused, and then we perceive friends that we are attached to and enemies that we hate. Actually, all of these are nothing but the appearances of our own mind. And so then, thus, in the state where appearances and mind are indivisible, there is a sense of being released. It is not that previously discrete things are now merged and have become one. They have existed primordially in this mode. So what this means is that it's not that, so before you did before you ever practiced, the mind and the appearances were separate. And then through your practice, you have made them whole, you have made them one. But this is not the case. Mind and appearances have always been indivisible primordially. So,
我真的这样中间有过，你嘛，我做在普通过老些事情就有了，
holog.
像这话的我忙些上过老的，但怎么对做对是不管的有本的，怎么抽你知道在打拉萨的结完了没？你这给这拉了噻，这结完了没？你这去打拉萨这噻，这工作啷个来？我在后了去忙不有了哇，去就钱包头的忙不有了哇，这就是在把通往才看，这通才对没在厂上嘛在工作他，没安排要嘛是他。他没在去考试的，他没水，也许还可以嘛这工作。
Kare hako mare?
是去考了，我说嘛是可能说的。
So kore hako mare.
考嘛是，他没安排嘛，都是他，俺们说抽是白有人的。这个也算，这家伙嘛，这要他咱这的，这家伙嘛这个，他俺说没在那去考试的，我天不记得了噻，这我天不要啥嘞。这家伙嘛，恰那了噻，恰也不说他来说什么事，也不说啥，不说在自己的这些，不说在自己的不说周有噻，可能这样子是啥玩意嘛，可能有了，可能只有什么了，说是这样子，从这的门啊恰是吧？就考要嘛的噻，他。
Me joke.
他叫他没抽有了，还有人的，还有人的没抽的，他去钱包头的，这娃钱包头的要了好嘞，哪怕了，他没占着，没占着我要嘛吧？
Hako sa sama hako sa ni poro di kola.
看着，
Di poro di kola.
你妈啦啊的，对呢，这其实现在去爬通是咱们常要嘛吧，没俺们多要嘛吧，长假只有啥话可能说，我在长假只有的这没俺们没对这也结完了嘛，结有啥话，但结婚对现在但俺说没在那去过son是，俺们朋友人都没抽有是，但没俺们没都是，我才去是话想，这结完了没去，他钱在哪啥了，钱同样有了，但同样哪对。这普罗下了吧？普罗下对他叫那是普罗的长假在自己拉了噻，这普罗长假在普罗抽有了吧？讲通噻，我这工作没抽去考没吧？这还过是吧？还过中哎。
Yeah. 对呢。
这人他在找我做，但抽着对天就抢着是吧？没抽我的俺们过所有嘛，那咱那玩意儿是，天就参加抽着是吧？啊，没得呗。
Howdy. And so then there's a story about like how our perception could be in a state of confusion. So there's another story about like there's another land where many people. It's in Golok actually. And it's in Amdo. It's in Golok in Amdo and so the mi tsama kukpa marawa di mi doktor
那这趟做坏了哇，小工作，做坏就重建了，学长做嘛就这个管地说啥的话工作。
Yes, I have to clarify because this is not a story about a town of stupid people. So I just want to make sure that so it seems like in the whole region everybody was stupid. That's because basically they're not very educated, but since they're like they don't really know how to count. Maybe stupid is not a good word. Maybe uneducated people, and so there were 6 people among them. They are nomads. So there are 6 people among them, and they wanted to travel to Lhasa to meet the Dalai Lama there. And so then they left, and they were on the road. And in Tibet you have some really big rivers, like strong rivers. And so then on the way, and one of them was taken by a river and died. So then they only had five men left, and so. But then they didn't really. They tried to figure out who was the one that the river took, but they couldn't figure it out. They didn't really understand who actually was taken. But so then they said, anyways, let's go. And then they went to Lhasa. And then when they came there, and they met the Dalai Lama, then the first thing they said is that first of all, one of us died on the way. First we were 6 and then now we have 5. One of us died. Please do some.
대 지요 공다 이제 라 제가 뭐 시송을 되 많이 소리 지요 살아 많이 하고 시면도 나가라 공다
Yeah. So they said that one of us died. So please do a prayer. And then the Dalai Lama, the Holiness Dalai Lama, asked them, "So what's the dead person's name?" And they said that they don't remember. They said we don't know that. And then the Dalai Lama said, "Okay, let's start with some tea." And then the Dalai Lama said, and the Dalai Lama put a teacup in front of each of them to serve them some tea. And then said, "So now everyone count the cups." And then there were 6 cups. And then the Dalai Lama said that, well, if there is 6 cups, doesn't it mean there's 6 people? And so then basically they realized that actually nobody had died, but they just didn't count themselves. They counted, huh? Yeah, they didn't count themselves. They counted the other 5 people, but not themselves. So each one of them thought there's only 5 people. So one of them must have been taken by the river. So anyways, this is sort of how we are in a state of confusion. But this is actually a real story, you know?
야, 좀 걸어. 드네 단지도래 생활이 내선 ngāli 내선 보양중 ngāli 로바 타다 중 ngāli 내선 보양중 근데네 ngā인데 그 차바데 로베랑 이시한 만통 송도 어다데 란지지베 다 제요라는 가서심 데 당아시 된사 ngāli 주케 노주 정말 잡도 로바 레고 탐지 단데를 용데 감송 심지한 탐지들 내선 보선 감송로 심지한 너들 중그레스 我真的哪里，他电用他们几千，可能去电把弄的就把就身边充满的差不多这些，我真的这蛮多钱，他们同学们都是都去他们去，我基本上在这点穷求的也送求的了吧。
And then Hivajra says, "From me arise all migratory beings. From me arise also the 3 abodes." So here the 3 abodes, this refers to the 3 realms of samsara that we know. And everything is pervaded by me. Other than that, no nature of migratory beings can be seen. So he says that I cannot see anything else that isn't me. Everything has the same nature.
写总呗，两级级别去当那，你吃了我部队咱们戳把妹子，我但是两级级别的一个，让那完了点呢，但吃了我部队戳不到去了。你看最近的讲究那样，假设才见得大，看的，当时他有啊，假设设计属于没错得到卡人有得到他们这第三名吧，特别从设计有啊，我真的他假设设计的看手气的是，但没这种看的穷的是，我这种第三点，他第三点他穷口的是，我在第三去那点那种人为也来到那穷口，他接的他差不多那也有的，托里种那也有的。 我真的，没来这边过真的有，也电脑顶桥他有都是，但那这是新干他嘛，新干的，这些都是，那这是新干的，从开发马来是，我说那么zaben这边是，马都的那边有都，从他家讲他说是，我这从马的就是说到起从马来真的是，我两岸这边那边的是中有吧。 我听对听那一旦我说的是超，我对听就有了吧。当然说你别家看见那在那边话确实是确实是那他都六次通过的是，没得听着都是全通过的是，但你话都是一大都是拿差着，你话都是超全着，通过的是，但说让那通那么着，真的最终就听着出啥的哇。我真的两姐姐吧，其实我不看下超把没次，送的哇。
And so then, first it says here, and thus apart from self-appearances after co-emergence, there is no true existence. even as tiny as an atom. So in the Bodhicharya Vatara, it says that the the burning the burning iron in the deepest hells are a creation of the mind. So of the evil mind, of the evil mind. So even though to the hell beings, the hell realm appears to be a really existing place, it actually is nothing else but the manifestation, the creation of their own mind. And then Milarepa, in one of his songs, said that the um, the gods, that the fruit that the gods enjoy from their field does not come from hard toil and labor, but it is the fruit coming from their merit. It comes naturally, and the weapons and suffering in the lower realms does not come from some separate henchman or enemy, but it's the full maturation of evil karma. So one has created one's own experience in existence. And then in a different text, it says that that's why our perceptions are different. For example, the gods will see a glass of water as divine nectar, and humans and animals, for us, it is water, and for hungry spirits, it is pus and blood, and for the hell beings, it is molten iron. 第三段弄的段采音呗。
这种没，
Okay, okay, that's it, yeah.
tena zangwan du ba, zang du le es, tangbo tena ma che ba, dong na chuni mi ba di, wa tangbo le je de le jo ma re es ma che ba, dong na chuni te je ba mi ba dong re es, namka da ba da mi, wa ta namka da win da se ne do se yo ma wa, wa de namka da da mi ba, changchop su den de de, wa de changchop su de de was.
And then in the Guhya Samajam Tantra, it says, as these are unborn in the first place, suchness is primordially void, devoid of any self, like sky. This is the way of enlightenment shown.
我真的单独的手呢，手呢扛的讲嘛，就扛腿样嘛，都是卡的样样那把米吧，就话卡的样那把就话米，我手汤包的扛穷人嘛是，真的扛送要嘛的是，真的扛那的，但觉得就是要嘛的送多。
In the sutras, it says forms come from nowhere, go nowhere, and abide nowhere. So all appearances don't come from anywhere. They are nowhere really right now, and they don't go anywhere.
我真的能往那错，能对人呢，能同人民，见个那什么他吃吧，牛没让那人的是，我他见个那什么他吃吧，牛嘛，他先可能让那的是。听个人不去，他那头里面的嘛那有啊，但他没去就那玩意思，去那那去我不他们几个是，去那那去我不他们几个，那人当时里面俺那说是，从这他发这通他一个是很多，从这他把这通他一个是，但他那边差吧那是，你看他们呢这边占那工程，查从三九这边，俺查从监岗没吧，这边总是。查从监岗这边俺啦说是，这他一去有成就吧那是，你们同样都把接下来，我是接触老爷就没有，有把让啥小吧出出中多，这一种呀，呀呀，就两万多，
这个也不走，
没经常老，我是老上的，很多两万。
just I think each year already did it.
没，呢，
你看，ada nang la song to.
那边的嘛呢，
Oh, Leo de Mara.
somebody you know doing go to
Okay.
giờ我吃上在学校的这看到一些说叫给我们给你过学校这我听了。
I think there's this really nice prayer by Guru Rinpoche, and I have that. I wanna get that really nicely. So I make it
对，那你给老给嘛，两家。
just a second, please. It cover the
这个汤包的上节点吧，没用我咋写这条的，多安个一毛或上节点吧，没用我咋写
那么多。
啊。像听过的重点上我的啊，可以那都有的，也那对吧？那我讲着那有的话，听久了重点就有，听久了啊，这上节点吧，没用我咋写的，假如吃送的学校这个的话，我听久一毛我等等的嘛，多少产品是这有的，感觉一些出现学校真多。 我挺久的，他的嘛，这里的钱在哪个时候？挺久的。那你什么的样原来？你怎么可能老过呢？那你什么不有吧？你怎么经常做剧其他有嘛了？
Leo Duma, tira.
我讲着什么有？这顺带有，这马天里去差不多送八点了，久了。很多我这些事我他要那个，俺但是有人没去到老家去嘛，是推嘛都要，差不多送八点。
Leo Sumbarwe.
我那送八点，一毛我做这点钱，在上都人过来，顺带挺过了。
So, okay. Cheese, I don't do it.
啊，
Oh, I don't do it. Oh, that's okay. Me, I'm gonna find it. It's so nice.
那你嘛那
Yeah, I don't have it memorized, unfortunately, but it's such a nice prayer. Can you hear? I guess I'm not that.
要是在像你嘛的，
Yeah, I can't
这
find
点
it.
没去就弄完那是，但这点没去弄完了吧？ 哎，我去就弄完那是，去弄那去，我婆他们几个是，那样当时那边俺来说是，那样当时那边俺来说是，从这他把系统他一个是，这到那边有差吧是那吧了，那边有差吧那这，年头那年这边这那个是，差通是，39这边俺来说39这边啊，差通39这。 39这边俺来说是，差通几个这边这边送是，
Talk to Karari.
差通39这边俺来说是吧？
Didn't teach you.
差通几个这那边这边这边送是，
Jinga me ba.
几万个吧没吧？这边送的是，那这到一区团结完那是，我们同个多块接下来样是，我是接触老一就没有是。 我受过嘛的是，接触过嘛的是，老一就没有，老一就过嘛的是就没有是，就把让啥下吧，缺个错是，就把让啥下吧，缺个错了，这个让着就那么了，说完的是，
Karati thamati kare. Rick.
这个让着那么了，说完的那么了是，
Okay, all right. Sorry, I didn't find it. So that's okay. So there's this very beautiful verse by Guru Rinpoche. It comes from the 7th chapter supplication. And so der Guru Rinpoche says, und was to Chisung that's in red,
말에 얘는 남캐 닝보 나오 남캐 닝보 센도
to Namkhen Yingbo. Okay. So it was a prayer requested by Namkhen Yingbo. And so he said, so what appears, so whatever appears on the outer level to whatever appears to your eyes on appearances, the outer world, the inner beings, the entire universe, although they appear, let your mind rest without any grasping at them. And then all appearance will manifest clearly as lacking any true existence of any subject object existence. And then the next is to all to them everything you hear. Whenever you hear something with your ears, all sounds that you grasp at as pleasing or unpleasing, unpleasant, while you hear the sound, it is empty. Sound is empty. It's just remain without thinking about it in the empty nature of sound. Then this empty sound that has no beginning and no end is the arising and cessation is the sound of the victorious ones. So this is the empty sound, the speech of all Buddhas. And then he said, and then whenever something rises in your mind, do this. So when thoughts and emotions arise in your mind, don't invite them in and don't pursue them. Don't let the mind fabricate at all. Simply allow your mind to rest in the nature of whatever arises, the thoughts arising. And this is the self awareness's self-liberation, the actual guru. So it says this I supplicate to the guru, which is my awareness's self-liberation.
근데다 라브드 메네베 주레스 난시 차자 첨보데 대화 군도 상보데 내는 샘지 대화데 내절만 주다바지 다 티상마 샘 총데레 렌다 송쇼서바
Then the extremely non-abiding Tantra says, appearances and possibilities are Mahamudra, the great bliss and the holy perfect. This is the leisure of mind which the Lord of Yogis beholds.
되는 나온다케 추탐치 나온통 주마 말람다고 시에데 히바르샤데 세와타 다 나와이나리 다 나와이나 가서 데리 작화다 자르와 자자서 뭐뭐제 영가서 변지기로와 뭐제 책도 야제 나오나 소소 파르텔 책도 세세라벼 들으요로와 가서 들인 두가 혀 되니기 가래 가고 싶어와 다 작동신은 대중시라 어서 말해 니마 가서 배우 배제 요래 뭐제 소바 곰도지 나와서라 소바 곰도지 이제 뭐제 냠소나 바로 사지 가르 소바지 나와서라 바로 사지 누가지기로 와다 샤텔라디 코 칼라이 바로 사지 소 주바디아서 소바 요 말다 요 말아 텐동데 내가도 다서 배 책도 야제라 파제도 야라 야 공아서라 참사 책에서 삼노제 성아서 제 성디도 하신 세서 니 마고 오지 근데 니 마고도 니 그래 수보 되고 용 말데 어디 sommer 가서 텐드 생야제 세 충충제 있는 성도 오늘 진다데 다 작성이 바시나고 세 딘노도 지야요 말와 알아서 텐드 그 말함지 마다 그러봤어 제송도 텐드 차서 냠나 치톰나 내가도 다니에 예르미바 소소이나 대도 sommer 예르미바 텐드 냠나 치톰나데 야고 살와
And thus all visible and audible phenomena denote the indivisibility of appearance and emptiness like dreams and illusions. as it was audible phenomena. All the sounds that we hear, and we hear all kinds of sounds, and we grasp a lot at what we hear. For example, what people say. We really fixate on what people say. For example, if somebody insults me, then I will try to come up with to say something even worse to them. That's what I'm thinking about. What can I say to get back at them? And then I get back at them, and then it gets even worse, and we start fighting. So actually, if you understand sound to be empty, it wouldn't affect you in the least. There's this one story in my homeland. There was someone who decided that they're going to practice patience. And so they were sitting there practicing patience, and then somebody else thought, I'm going to see if they're really practicing patience. I'll test their patience. So then they said something really insulting. That's one thing we say that's called parosa, which means eat your father's corpse. So it's kind of like a curse in Tibetan. And so when he heard that, it's like a really terrible thing to say. He was really angry and said, like, how can you say that? Why did you say that? And so then he knew, okay, you don't have any patience. And so when we hear words of others, then very often then the patience goes out of the window and we begin to fixate. And so then often like we think about something very small somebody said, and we can't let go of it. We can't stop thinking it. Bothers us so much that we don't even sleep at night. We keep thinking about it. And then if we don't get proper sleep, then also we are physically not really well. Actually, if you understand sound to be empty, then all of that wouldn't bother you in the least. You would see just like a dream or something, an illusion. So that is if you really are able to practice. If you're able to practice, it all becomes the same. There's no difference between enemies and friends and pleasure and pain and so on.
这算。
Big song.
我真的小把的别是这南这球呢，就慢慢了些，松烟当中我不才嘛米，就没看见三年那么看着，他这外面虽然没些，些没就是，看个那错，去弄那错的，把啥经济减少着的，打发的什么当，什么就那错，秋季人了，如果这些把下，是我当这种多，南这球他们就他们那么的不是，什么那么的，没去。maar de Juma de mik jita bres Juma sen na Jumek ze du ze ming chu tong nian ze da Juma ze ce ya de la ge ran zo chu do ya le wo ten de is mik jita bres ni ma nga zo pe yu an ze la ya de ma ze da ming chu de ma mo dong xiu sa ba ming chu de ma mo dong xiu sa de de xiao dang ze dang xiu de da ma jong te de mo da ze ge wo qi xiu sa de xiao de ni ma ze da ma chang ze nga zo dan zhuo guai de ba zhuo guai de ten de ze 他才把那种拍的我把起来我这过了，我这跑的我晓得你如果啊，把现在这过种了，可能种他压死吧，把那个，
哦，
刚把要嘛了吧，晓得呢，咱就嘛没去东年工大他在做点点学啥，咱没长体呢，晓得没长体呢，点点在学这些，晓得的。 这没从嘛要工大要做，身边都是怕，但这学校这各种那个测试的没从嘛要能做么些。这民主当看提起，但没从嘛能做么都给都是那么多事。这有这哪儿些？要但听那不给厂有嘛些？不是公司说这厂什么了哇？身边这马厂，这些人做啥了哇？
不这当收这个。
嘛的，常常说就是嘛能提供的，可以拉着个了。哦，我真的是大概不给做啥了哇？ 그거 되들래 아사마 봐. 저 그래 다 코밍추당 알았어. 민추당데 탑가 열어. 아주 제플라라 탑가지 사도 소셔로 와 사도. 와 사도 소셔 탑가도 그 탑바지야도 가래에서 친도서 와고. 저 친도도 다我那天吃药药嘛是吧？저 탑가蛋吃样的蛋种真吃着这个胖吃错吃是吧？탑가是。
속전한 지금 봐서.
속전한 이 벌써 튀는 거 봐. 야 복지 디바 내요세 바 잡로 어떻게 좀 주사 요라 요래서
Uh-huh.
데데디가 살아
Uh-huh.
고데데디 그런 한트 파리요 소리 좀 명주자자 뭐서 그 나라서 자주서라고 나 태버서 말아 복지다 맹춘도야 복
Din Bouddha Chesong.
복지다 제일 루스와 그런
Uh,
데디요 말아
uh,
Teko ma le au sa te nang zu fu sam nang man zu di de ba jab lo te ya trom dan zu sa se yora ba ma sa ma ta
oh,
ti te pa te di ga sa ra ko
uh,
te de di ko ko ron ham pa yo so yo te chi di no su me te ta kan che do ya yo sa ma ra
uh,
te
Chupute.
bu te sa ra ta na ra de ja ya te ya sa ma ra ko ji lu ju wa ta re ya te ko ham pa yo so yo do do se te mo
Mite,
chi ba a
mite ba.
mo ti ki da ju ma de ya mo je yo ra
Na ko ham pa to yoga.
그런 한 파리 소리도 쓰면 대답한 쳐도야 북tin 동쇼 삼아라
Uh,
어다 텐저 요사라 지마테 켄조
uh,
어든 어지마다 어든 오늘 진짜 다그 지마 딩아라고 마테 북티 공원 내제 다 함이 되나 제가 동쇼 말아
uh,
어디 텐저레스 믹스 두다 믹스 나 당아서 사 감보도 사도 춘정 통으로 도 당아서 텐저와 믹스 현재 추송면 추요 말아
uh. In
어다
a boat,
소미야
they go on to the Nuna de Tongso.
북팅 오늘 동송 거선 그런 한 표다라
Yoga. Can
그
back at
말게
home.
아
Can back at Hangamara.
先
Boot.
把什么，但先把什么冲着样子，啊，这是讲的是吧？哦，真的松烟汤松，我不吃嘛没事，我在松烟汤松，我不吃嘛，差不多了有嘛的，就没能看心里能干的，我但就嘛能看就有了，俺让说出的能看就有了，先不让碰把的，能看着是，他有没见，虽讲些没就是他是有嘛的，但他有嘛了。有嘛的，他有些是就这些嘛的，刚刚来说，去弄来说，他刚刚他去刚刚来说，他去忙不有了吧？去忙不长嘛的，或者间接减少了这点是，我在减少呢，再去上嘛几块钱这个是。我大会先当审中那做事子，先那的审中现在可能从啊，究竟那逻辑些吧，噻，我究竟同大几块的也是的。
And then this quote by Shavaripa. And so, like illusions, mirages, and reflections, all visible and audible phenomena lack true existence and characteristics. So a mirage here actually means like something like a magical spectacle, like a show, like something like a magician conjures up. And also regarding that, Rupen also remembers a story from his homeland. So there was this magician, and sometimes people would invite them to their home just for entertainment, for a show, and again, these were all nomads, and so they were all staying at that time in a yak hair tent, right? So not real houses, but they had these tents made out of yak hair. And so there was a family, and one evening they invited that magician to come to their tent, to their home, and to for a performance. And so then he came, and everybody in the family was done with their work for the day, and they all gathered. And then the magician came, and the magician asked them, "So is everybody here?" And they said, "Yes, everybody's here." And then actually said, "No, there's one of them is missing." It's the kid who was kind of watching the yaks. One of the yaks is still with one of the yaks, and they're not back yet. And so then what he did is he made this trick where he kind of pretended to apply a mantra, and then that would cause the oven. So they had this kind of stove, not it's like a stove that is made out of bricks and rocks. So then he pretended he made this show that where this stove became the yak, and then he kind of pulled on the stove and they made the stove go back and forth, which is of course generally not really possible because it's quite a heavy for a rock stove to kind of move back and forth like a yak. But that's what the stove did. The stove was kind of moving sort of on his own, and so then meanwhile, so it looked like a real thing, and so then meanwhile, actually the lost kid, the child that was not at home, was actually peeking in from a little hole in the back of the opening in the back of the tent. And so the kid could see what's really happening from behind, what the other people from the front could not see. And so he could see that basically all the magician was really doing is he was kind of like throwing his shoes kind of back and forth and back and forth. So, and that kind of gave the impression that like something is moving. And exactly no, but I guess through the throwing of the shoes, haben die paar zu jung.
Han
Ja,
party så det var så där. Bok
ja.
det
Så, die haben die paar zu jung, och den är tappkan kan det då.
det det konan så så där. Men jag tror då ja, han tappar chans och så där.
Yeah, so I was just wondering how he managed to get the stove moving by throwing away his shoes back and forth. But anyways, somehow he did have some ability as a magician. But it was not exactly the stove walking on his own, basically. It was still him throwing the shoes. And so that the kid saw that that's just an illusion. He's not really moving. But everybody else on the other side, they did not see that. They were completely confused, so to speak. So that is the confusion, very similar to the confusion or kind of the visual confusion that we perceive. And so then that quote continues, illusory appearances are mind alone, which like the sky without center or boundary is recognizable by no one. The various rivers such as Ganga and so forth have the same taste upon merging with the salty ocean. Di Bartolomba.
Children rojiks he just var.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Och det som så det några arkitektur tamti. Någon ton charton riton ta ji kvar va. Yin mi nam ka da vis. So mi tongwa bo yang mi da mi toba bo yang mi. Che mi no ba bo yang mi ro mi yong bo yang ri ya mi rai mi ri ba bo yang mi san mi sim jiu yang. 这种是他对他就当个做手动把我动把你手里动把你先嘛你动把你手先嘛你是老让个做写了就不能做他挺乱啥的。
Yeah, and then likewise, it must be realized that the various imputations, such as mind and secondary minds, have the same taste in the expanse of phenomena. Thus, all visible and audible phenomena are apparent yet empty, audible yet empty, aware yet empty. They are the indivisibility of awareness and emptiness, just like space. There is neither form nor someone who sees. There is neither sound nor someone who hears. There is neither smell nor someone who smells. There is neither taste nor someone who tastes. There is neither touch nor someone who touches. There is neither mind nor secondary minds. In the Heart Sutra, it says that form is emptiness, emptiness is form. There is no other form than emptiness, no other emptiness than form.
学堂是没这边就那他们去让我东半截了，让啥他，老这一了前面的上级军警上是吧？但就他们去我问东半的是，东半截啊是老太阳让啥他过来是啥他呢？老他们经常吃的，一了这样没了前面把那上级军警上这些送多。
My tripper said, all phenomena are empty by their own nature. The concept of grasping at emptiness is purified in its own place. Beyond thought and nothing to think about, this is the path of all Buddhas.
他呢，他自己他呢，他个作用可上到现在国嘛不接拉吧，现在国民党的，但是那位的南头的那湾的。他的多国可能先过的国民家嘛不在去吧，我等着在国民党这行动，他呢，然后呢，开始挺多的，解放军人家， 그 작전 lenche je jo khndra ba je yora dino la namka la metho je kom go sang metho mar bo no chimbo ndas kom je ka si ka so shi ki u gi de ka so che u gi de za ba no wa tel da se mai ba mai ba jo ko res wa tel se na se tho jo mai ma me se na me se je na ta ya se tho jo ten ru chin yang de zo wa te mai ba chi go res mai
Se kula kare, se chocho kare.
sem se na
Mm,
se be tho sha 所以我们都那样先点起，我听出去呢，这我们国的中多，我这交通是我前面学呢，我这么去了，没到过面，还得学什么去，没到这样年纪我这先年来偏给的中多，我听出对这我听出这么这样的我们这个，但开始我们七八们都开始现在过了开始有了，听说我们这样呢，但俺做的。그랑 뭐 이신의 멤버들 저 랑동아 가게 보면 또 저서 보면 다 되게 많이 수차로 어떻게 가르고 보면 제가면 되네 되게 있어 나도 몸자에 시간 막 가게
So now we're going to do a few minutes of meditation again. And so you can choose any meditation that we have discussed. We discussed different ways of meditating, shamatha, different kinds of shamatha practices, or vipassana, or about the appearances, or about seeing the thoughts. And then there's actually one method that comes from the commentary on the Mahamudra, the co-emergent Mahamudra, written by Gyabang Gungor Rinchen. And this example says that you can visualize a big red flower in space, a fresh, kind of freshly blossomed a flower in full bloom, like a newly blossomed, open, red flower. And just focus on that single pointedly. And if it's clear, then rest in the clarity. If it's not clear, try to make it clear. And so one time I actually asked Gauchen Rinpoche, why actually should we visualize a flower specifically? And then Rinpoche said that it's because a flower is beautiful, and if we focus on something that's beautiful, it's easier for the mind to stay there. But so you can pick anything that you like the most, any of the practices that we have mentioned in the last few days, shamatha or vipassana practice. So we have covered most of them already now. And so now we're going to meditate for a few minutes.
tene danga zo tata ti jo ti ma ta tong han de sa re tene danga zo ngon ro ngo ji yin ro cha chi ta je xa ba je ti nyam ne chi dang ko re sa je danga zo ta ze yi ma ze be jang de ga zo cham da ti nyam ne ti si na je ke chi mo je yo shan na ti nyam ne la ro re ta nyam ne zo ti yun tu ti si chi thom ti ke chi mo yo re这个的年龄参参北京参着要不谈不的有人过来的呢，这样怕有啥呢？对年龄北京，你们这第三好像有点么，这些大怕空气多难着个了。我这当公办嘛，一公办一啥子，我做年龄讲都空松了的，我年龄讲错了个了。我听着有这地方在团这些嘛，他们难着个的是这的，我咱先老公就刚办一种说。松柏节人家弄中路那是，希望我们讨论呢，通不那么上节我进都些技术吧，对不对？然后路下来是的，做的，对的，他先老我们就刚办意思，我们在那刚办过去了，这先老这个，刚办点不然后头过吧，我先老是那他希望我们他就是要不这样过去的。你嘛，他这个做参考的做那这，希望我们他做这一个厂嘛，这个情报都在。通杀等于下，对，说千万没打死人那边的，我听说起过的吧，我这千万没打死这，我做厂嘛有个了，在这等于那，我做车推销嘛了，在几就说的，这我不是那千万没打来红个的，我做厂嘛有个的，这，听你，我当初在这是听过，说的千万没打乱呢，听不那么上，说话东的，别让老头子下来没人来下死，谁来多半没被见。也生意话经常爱下死，就那那边从把些过，说他就那些个刚在你们那康州都去投票，有的你那当然说自己想在你们那前面那卡地是你们那去投票的，好在吃老腿送在车车星星平常忙不休息了，听过这原因送的你们，其他的是搞的好多。在那点把他们那狂把空地些，我在这里拉多，在点把他们那空地些空平地是吧？我这小心没有有人中国，是没有人不中国的也算多。
So then we come to the last section, the part number 3, the way to maintain the experience at the end. And so that is about, now we have completed the preliminaries, we have completed the main practice, and now this is the conclusion. And that is actually really important, actually, and because it may be the case that you do a long retreat, a very strict retreat where you practice really well. And then when you come out of retreat, you might just not really practice anymore and just not really do much. And then you will lose your practice again. You might still have an imprint in your mind, of course, but it won't really develop your practice at all. And so it's important to bring the experience always into your into the time afterwards, into your life. And so it is said that it's not about meditating, it's about habituating. So it's not about achieving a certain state of meditation, but it's about sustaining a continuum of a habit of always practicing. That's really what meditation is. And it is said that the legs of meditation is renunciation. So if you have strong legs, you can go anywhere. So it says here, with your mind undisturbed by thoughts and tamed by reflection on death and impermanence, generate recognition of your guru as the real Buddha and supplicate with heartfelt devotion. So it's really important to continuously think about that death and impermanence. This is what will make your practice stable, like having strong legs. When I was in retreat, I would write death and impermanence. We would all do that. We would write that on a piece of paper and then like hang that up like a sticker and hang it up everywhere where we could see it. So we always remind ourselves that I'm going to die. Life is impermanent. Of course, we all know that, but we don't usually think about it. And then it happens suddenly, and it happens to all of us. And so therefore, it's important to remember that and to really do your best to practice well. So then it says, so then let your awareness relax spontaneously without distraction. This will bring clarity without concepts, which is pristine, vivid, and nakedly clear. Such clarity must appear perfectly throughout the four activities. This is called nailing stability with practice, which means that it is necessary to sustain non-distraction for long periods. So we may go into a retreat that goes well, but when we go out of retreat, we are confronted with all kinds of sensations, all kinds of distractions, different colors everywhere. And then it's very difficult to stay focused. So it's important that in those particular times that we kind of nail our stability with the practice that we have gained in the retreat.
真的，就当我做古上那边形容呢，老多些这当军的这家多，真的各当给嘛给些特殊家，你们各当特殊，但各当特殊别人们学去那么大青年中很多，我听的真的各当给些他有的是哪里长把些，各当给些克拉公穷设计有的是。我克拉公穷设计克拉真晒嘛，那实际脏的克拉是实际真多，我得让你们去。
Karai.
晒可能没克拉一般的， 脏的是晒克拉做真多， 脏的实际的。 我这是当你们去学班的空，光家的克拉工穷是那学生的空，差不多呢，但最多学生差不多呢，马过同的，吃嘛就有的说，吃嘛有啥差不多的下，这空那么是同学生了呀，那个吃嘛这就没得这样子些，想到哦，他推出出来的，我去老同的也拿最头里面些有嘛的，什么这吃嘛就有嘛些，拿也最多。 嘛，在中国什么的呀？俺拿最马同特别些嘛，中国的是，他讲在克拉索样，这讲在去了去不上的配表，去了中国学啥也差不多。他讲他同学啥的，他就这么弄，可能让他点了，可能出来托什么的就特别嘛，是他是吧？那千万没打这样，因为推出出来的，咱们的千万没打，还得用些就嘛，咱们的他就这么多那么多。我真的觉得这些人嘛，健康世界有这种的，我健康世界可是那的。 这些这他给他请不了，说这个事情，我这个听叫你个吧，是啥么呢？这样年牛嘛，是个听叫你个吧，出来这个让这样你做口牛嘛的些，我这那个听叫去推出出来当里面，让客人呢听叫你要提我空的，我这样你买口呢，你们来去个些，这种多。但是现在搞到这些样子有些，浪长把时间有的是。
Lang det timba.
lang sang ba sa de. De kon chi wa kurwa de ti han ngen jong shu je je sa ro wa kurwa yo ra. Kurwa dong ara ji re zam bu ko ma sang me lang sang ba ngo na la ba de sa. Ngo na ko. Ko ge mo chu ge ya ma sa. De kurwa ngen jong ju wa je di. 你妈在他这边用着，真多的古上那边形容那的话题给，啊，晓得。你妈这空，他这我们家啥太小的的。 这次这个跟缅甸讲的有进步就有啥了哇？缅甸讲有进步说啥嘞？这是在开始工作时的，这在去了开头有什么了哇？这是然后如果这提供的，这可能开头是晓得给么子学了是吧？对的，晓得嘛多，他们给么学了嘛？老是但过来研究检查呢。哦，真的，当我做来准备讲的技术没了，想多天了。哦，那技术没了，他切头得把忙不去切米。 他kon mang ba nyarwa ma thong do sa mi sam jun de che che ne de che che lu je sang ji ya de nyam na chi re s o de lu dong lo do shi ke ko de nga zo gu zang na me xin lo na de lu dong xiang do
Die damju nieba gawa die ki 10 karare chenga.
Jenga ge shi jenga ga dam ge shi jenga.
Chengara. And so in the words of my perfect teacher, in the teaching on the four thoughts that turn the mind, there's a story to illustrate each of those reflections. And so the first one And then these are mostly about the Kadampa geshes in the past who were really strong and authentic Dharma practitioners. And so the first one was a geshe called Karag Gomjung. So Karag was the name of that place, that area. And so he was a meditator in Karag. And so he was meditating in a cave, and eventually in front of his cave there was a thorn bush that kept growing. And so then every time he left the cave, that the thorns would catch on his clothes and would rip it. And so first he thought that maybe I should cut down the thorn bush. But then next he thought, but no, but after all, I might die. And then what is the point in having cut down the thorn bush if I die? I never return to the cave. I don't know when I'm going to die, so I better go to practice. And so that sort of went on, and the thorn bush kept growing, and he kept thinking that, and he never actually ended up cutting it down. And so then eventually he became accomplished the Mahasiddha without ever having cut down the thorn bush. And so he was someone who had a very strong reflection practice on death and impermanence. And then the second story was about another Geshe Chengawa. And he was always thinking about the difficulty of finding a precious human body with the freedoms and advantages. And so he would never rest, he would never sleep, because he felt like he has no time to sleep, because he felt that he has this precious opportunity having this human body. And then an example of someone who reflected on the suffering nature of samsara was the story of Geshe Langri. And so he had strong renunciation to samsara. And he was also known by everyone as the gloomy faced one. Everybody called him gloomy face, because he would always look really sad. He would never smile at all. But actually, one time he smiled, only once ever he smiled, and that was when he saw a little mouse trying to move a turquoise stone that was on his mandala. And of course, the mouse is so small it could not lift the turquoise. And then another mouse came along, and then they tried to push the turquoise together, and so that made him laugh. That was the only time he laughed. And then the fourth story that's mentioned in the text is the example of Milarepa, the story, which is the reflection on karma. And so Milarepa had committed great evil in the early parts of his life, and he realized that the only place for him to go is hell, and he fully trusted in karma. And because of that, really, ultimately, he became enlightened in a single body, in a single lifetime. So.
dine da tiri maar son tiram do da gom ji ne da po mi ba ne nurun damza shobra da buris da jarwon bang la ba to nurun dam na nurun se kenye na yo dan to da yo marwa damsep sen da kenye na yo ba na yires da dine jarwon bang la ba son da jarwon to ma cha kan yo ma na ma ha di na na ji res da gom te nyamne ma ji na singe chi da la shobra ta si xemo gom ji da po go so da xemo gom da po sen na da he zong xemo gom ji gang ba chas da xela gom ji gang ba chi wa ning han ji chi wa ning han ji xiao ce de jiang dang zong duo ce de lo da ce lo dang ce jian duo da ce lang no dang ne ge le ha po di shui nga lang so pe jie ting zang ce lo dang ne zo niu niu de pe jie you ji ma xi da 这龙当上，那就是没啷着嘛。但这你可穷了，几天出去，上马把路当去的。我搞什么的？但是这，那这我做在娘娘这边读书，但这路当特别这个来可不来，真的。好在我做这上研究穷穷特见多啊。这研究穷穷特见多，他俺这路当就是这个来可不，俺这做研究有人不那几没些就嘛嘞。我这你嘛我做培育别解有嘞。 么在他这么来的反正，但俺启动你是可能就那从没地头啥吧，就那从没地，但俺没来的反正我们家是这样啥吧，咱们来的反正我们家头个嘛吧，这嘛到对的嘛老啥的，那老啥个嘛那可能就那种看反正我就看我从没地啥吧，你们那起码头是吧？这其实真的可看拉了噻，没来的把这边弄起从俺帮过说从这拉了噻。哎呀，我真正我在瞧着人家有了吧？伊那当俺做在你们俩去那考了，在别家去说在你们俩去，第一次了在拍个就看其他大么子，你们俩提讲了三点，我听着系统呢，好像在推说别家去说在罗档，在罗档嘛，就是在罗档是吧？在我听着系统呢，第四，别家他就是在马上那里是吧？我听着这些那偏头有来什么，但别想就是这次你们俩去用呢，他可把大家种听上咱们这有了吧？这是买鸡，这是怕可把人那国家这个，我听着这系统呢，这是你们俩这偏头有来什么是吧？
And then it says, not caring for the meditation that has been developed is like losing a precious jewel in the mud. Or Dubon said it's like throwing away a precious jewel in the garbage. Like a king descending to the position of his subject, and like a lion following a dog. Therefore, care with detachment is needed. Thus, make detachment the feet of meditation. Keep death close at heart. Cast away concern for this life. So regarding this here, casting away concern for this life. So nowadays, especially, it is a little bit difficult to completely let go of all worldly activities and only practice. Not many are able to do that. Probably most people, but there's probably not really anybody who is really doing that. Like the way Milarepa did it when he was alive, where he really totally gave up the 8 worldly concerns and any worldly activity at all. And so that's not really possible anymore these days. And also it's not actually necessary. We shouldn't not actually do that. It's because the reason why we shouldn't do it is that it's possible that sometimes we do have moments of renunciation, and then we may think I'm going to practice and then I'm giving up life, I'm going to practice, but then after a while you're not so sure, and then maybe you try to come back to life and then it's very difficult, and then you've lost a lot. We've had such a person actually in my homeland, who was determined that I'm going to become like Milarepa. I'm going to practice like Milarepa. So he made up his mind and he gave away everything he owned, his house, his money, everything, all his things. He gave it away to others and he left for the mountains to meditate. But then he couldn't practice like Milarepa. And finally he realized that he's just not able to practice like that. And he decided to go back, but then there was nowhere to go back to because he had given everything away. He had nothing left, so he was like a beggar then. And then he regretted and he felt that actually Milarepa really harmed me. Milarepa made me a beggar. So there's a danger that these kind of thoughts then arise in the end. So it's better not to go to such an extreme, but when you practice, even just for an hour, give up worldly concerns, give up life, so to speak, for 1 hour. Meaning that don't look around, don't do any other things in that hour. There's so many things to do these days. People like to look at their phones and so on. Close your phone, turn off your phone, don't look around, don't do anything else, and just focus on the practice for this 1 hour. And that's really, then you're really giving up life, concern for this life for this 1 hour, or you can also do it for longer. But so this is really the way to practice. So
真的，他现在我们就讲吧，是模糊我们就我一种的，但模糊是我的，但那么但说这边那么的，这就边那么长模糊去过个，但我瞧这情况都快接完说噻，这模糊开始因为其他模糊也好去过去，模糊东东下去我们个这通也的俺呢，查到都快他们我行吧去。 Rangi mi ban ro so de chara to pati ngo si rangi mi ban ro gre song do.
And then it says, make devotion the head of meditation. When you meditate with heartfelt devotion to the Guru, the subtle and coarse thoughts spontaneously disappear. And so, for example, you can pray to the Guru and all the lineage masters with heartfelt devotion and yearning. Please help me to realize Mahamudra. And then the subtle and coarse thoughts will spontaneously disappear upon recognition in the pristine and vivid mode of clarity and emptiness.
전에 다 쳔바 고미 오지 좀데 쳔바 고미 오지 너네 다 쳔바 쳔게 쳔시에 때 먹어야 개침 버려 가서 내 탐보 봐但是常常这些研究个的研究说쳔게讲냠네 치特别개침 버려 와 쳔바 때 고미 오지在是种咯他地那的没时间嘛都看见那才有嘞我听的我到쳔바 개침 버려 그마 가当给些有是吧可们边空家的那在那么边空家
Hana?
Ben 공절.
Ben, oh.
공절라서 라표사리.
Mhm.
그거 뭐 그만 독자 쇼제래서 와.
Mhm.
그만 독자 쇼제. 뭐좀 하나 그 메인 코디서 신앙제 거야. 뭐 로충충해서. 뭐 그만 독자제여서 와. 근데 제일 그 연종제 제도. 연종 쇼제데 냠냐 제도. ben 공절라서 와. 가담 계신다 저기 다 ben 공절서. 냠냐 쇼제 치여서 근데 그거 니마데 마상자나 로르세. 그 마상자나 손도 되네. 다 마상자도 다 호는 저거라 마시. 저도做起가 다 저도 做起些说 저도 쇼양 좀 쓰러 단 로어서 내가 여러 이공수. 그 보나지고 나한테도 살아. 당해를 주 상황나 차미 다 차고 싶고 자고 살아서. 차록세 쿠마나 말아가 자서 봐. 차록세 라페 마르잡디 트레코 텐션 정리 있어요. 샤당.这没上就给讲，哎，过嘛来都要我拿学去拿不是？晓得拿不的，这么次数就我拿酒是吧？拿来是吧？拿来的，他过嘛看了都是，这可能老板前路是空没拿酒有了，也过嘛的人是。但是那时候老板那里怕酒是拿，他可能ten现容易是吧？你们这一块其实是但日出但场地的可能经常的是茶用可是话茶是你，等你确保就是第一年级用的怕早嘛的也不说，确保就是也不都第一的是，这里说呈现的你是，好，他确定没多少年呢，经常我送去上面的，可没当时贴了有了，贴了把它讲的确别讲，颇有些多，这第一的是。但是这个呈现你也蛮不有的，你们这样个茶话中呢，第一头啥的，那我们在那在学的是也学啥吧？学的也学是学的，学呀，他说呀，他这帮我这种学卡在这么的，有时他说我这这帮就贴了说啥吧？像这个这贴嘛，送上来的算嘛，在穷我是吧？他不用别多压的，让我呈现你卡，普罗瓦嘛卡不，这个学龙干的比呀，他学的我学啥他连通啥意思，这个都有嘛是。但是那种呈现你对的，人们就是说起头学的，可能你嘛这他们都压着我，然后在家长学的的是啥怎么用个吧
？So then, it is also said that, not here in the text, but it is said that the main practice, that the actual meditation, the main meditation is mindfulness. And that's so really most important, because that we get distracted. And so when we are distracted, it's important to just always keep coming back. And there's also another story about another Kadampa Geshe, Ben Gungyal. And so he when in the early part of his life, when he was younger, he was actually a thief. And then later he became like a practitioner, and he renunciate, and he became a really good practitioner. And so then he was one day he was invited. He was coming to a family's the home of some benefactors, and so again in Tibet in these days most people were nomads, so they spent the days outside herding the animals. So the family was all outside with herding their animals. So then the geshe was alone at home of that family's home, and so he was sitting there, and so then he thought, actually, I don't have
그런
any.
성과나 제함이 이상하더라.
He thought, actually, I couldn't eat some tea in my retreat hut. I don't have any tea. Maybe I should take a little bit of their tea, and so that I have something back in my retreat cabin. And so then he reached with his hand into the bag of tea, and then suddenly he realized what he was actually doing, that he was going to steal something. And see, he left his hand in the tea bag, and then he called the benefactors and he said, "Come here, come quickly." And they like, "What happened?" And he said, "There's a thief." And so then they quickly came, and he still had his hand in the tea bag when they came, and they asked, "Where is the thief?" And he said, "Here, it's my hand." And he said, "You should cut it off, cut off my hand." Uh, and so then that was one of his practices of mindfulness. And then another time he was in his own cabin, and one of his bigger benefactors announced a visit, and he thought that he will set up really nice offerings because it's a very important benefactor, sponsor. So he put up a really beautiful offering bowls and all of that, and then to impress them. And then he realized what he was doing again, and he thought that this is so insincere.
你今天
To
取经中
understand.
是吧？
Ah,
你今天取
ah.
经中，你今天取
Oh
经。
yeah, it is so insincere, and this is the practice. It's really the eight worldly dharmas, just wanting to impress somebody. And so then he picked up some ashes from his stove, and he threw it all over the beautiful offerings, and he made it all dirty again, and he left it like that. That was one story, and then there's another story of Ben Gungyal, and so in that story he was with a gathering of other monks, and so then there are other geishas, and there was some yogurt offered to all of the guests there. And so usually it's like that. When the yogurt is offered, they start in the beginning of the row, and then they work themselves toward the end of the row. And so then the geisha was sitting more in the towards the end, and then there were the monks sitting in the beginning of the row, the first row, and they were receiving much larger portions of the yogurt, and he thought
可能
they
学也是 tips 蛮的样子的，可能节有了成就。
and so then because they received these large portions, he thought that I don't think I will get my fair share here. Because they are getting so much, there won't be much left for me. And so then immediately he caught himself, you're such a yogurt addict. And then he turned his bowl upside down, and he ended up not getting any yogurt at all. And so this is one way of how he had dealt with negative habits in the mind, just cutting straight through them like that.
但我是忙呈现投入你个是呈现投入在，但我就好强的这个这是成把研究呀，这个用着啊，这些你都投入说你们来系统呢，我呈现跟着别晓得这个他们这些本空下子钱多啊，我这其实呢这怕他把上级送了说，后确保呢要求本空下确保他的这拉是个贴把它看有了，可你贴把它看多了我他的。 都在那确保贴把它看路是吗？
Oh,
我今天出去看贴把托是
贴把
贴把它看路是吧？ 这怕他们上去后确保那要是在他空确保的这是。
So this is how we practice mindfulness and cut through our habitual tendencies as they arise on an ongoing basis. Just as the case with the Geshe Ben Gungyal. And actually, Padampa Sangye had said that this Geshe Ben Gungyal, he said he's the best Dharma practitioner in all of Tibet. And because he threw the ashes onto the 8 worldly concerns.
这几天呢，我真的让他吃饭的送当了这个。
Do you have any questions?
Zoom 拿吃饭对。没对。
Look, there's nothing in Zoom so far. Oh, there's one here now.
Yeah.
Page 25, in a description of calm abiding and special insight, it is not clear to me how to distinguish the two. In the context of this text, can we enter special insight meditation as an ordinary person before entering the path of accumulation or the path of seeing? Let's do the first question first. There's 2 questions. Shorten Nishutang, let me just go back to page 25. On page 20, 1 second, let me just go back. Okay. The Deladirva, the Shorten Nishutang, the Nishinet Chandogara, the Ni go to where they captelara. Then 송교사님, then langtung gom tubaki chagenda wo isara. Then mazadim nyamlen chebe kapla. Una langtung gomyela, langtung gom. Chira mi sosoki borwa, mi tamalba. Gom tukido es yana una langtung gomyela tangbo. Ini di kare cholam yana tonglam top gorwes.
这当郎中生意吧，这同南头蛮这个嘛，这中多几岁没来的给的，没来的吧，同步年们去，这我们家这去了吧，这个了马路也送，这没来的吧，我们家啥的了，但多半了，没来的吧，多半是在给家亲多，可能年们亲戚，这没来的吧，听过多回过，多半是朋友了，这个，这郎中生意当天吧的，啥当不同南去年吧同南。 接触马来松了是吧？
没来巴给松嘞。
没来这边许多嘛是吧？
And so the real authentic vipassana special insight actually really only will really arise on the path of seeing. When Milarepa was first meditating, so he was still with Marpa and he went off to meditate then. And so at some point, Marpa came to see him to ask about his experience and his realization. And then Milarepa offered a song of offering in return. And so basically, Milarepa then said that the completely pure path of seeing is vipassana that directly realizes the mind. So in other words, it meant that you can only really gain this insight on the path of seeing. Can I take another Zoom question, or is there anything there?
If there's no questions on Zoom, I have one. I would like to go back to the terms from day one when we talked about clarity, emptiness, bliss and emptiness, and awareness and emptiness. I'm still not 100% sure what is meant by clarity. Is it being aware of all the details of various things? Basically, I want to know, like, what's the difference between awareness and clarity?
가장 저기 sartong, tetong, riktong, sungguta. Ni sartong saya tarong shiraya pukuk hako kementuk. Ya, tini nguna salpo saya di sal saya di chama hako arwe. Tini tinde ina Dennis Sardang Rick said the Kibak Due Kibak Harari.
치파시라면도 세라이나 치파면도 세세세워세 고가 안보도 고가 손나 곰 생이 상바 말레스 나테테테서나 대세워요 바탈라 세통스쇼다 세팅오 세동바로 와거나 나데 킨 오 직파면 안테 카가제 동바세 요마와 대세통스쇼 세라표사로
So actually there is no real difference between clarity and awareness. So clarity, being clear, specifically means that all of your senses are fully alert, fully clear. If you shut down any of them, then you're not fully clear. And so this clarity or alertness is empty in nature. So there's no other emptiness. So the nature of it is empty. Let's take another question.
저반도에다
Wrong to Zoom, no, like hashiduk.
야야디라
Then in the Zoom, this text has these expressions: self-appearances and self-awareness and self-luminous primordial awareness. Why the addition of the word self? 이게 어디 숨고도 베나 랑낭 드니 랑릭 여러 니 랑살 이셰 여러 랑세다 바 랑 숨고도 누나 베나 internal self 라그라 랑세디라 드니 sometimes self 다 다시야 될 랑기르와 나랑 랑라
네
드니 나랑다고라고 차라와 그냥 캐랑다고라 self tag nang shin da bachag yora self
세 거기 나한테
rang
거기 나한테 다세 거기 말아 랑세데 랑지세와노 거기로 랑지세와 랑나세 나와라나 로예 추남 시지 메데 나와라나 로예 추남 시스라로 랑 나와알데네 발로 치신로레스 나제 다세데 티니 포지션 거기 넌 저기 말아 에르시랑 하고 그러 랑세세 랑지파 제와 랑나세 랑지 나와라 나제 티 가서 다 거기 이치 토한테 라셔서 말해
So in the Tibetan, it's the word. So the word is rang, right, in Tibetan, and the actual word for self would be dag, not rang. But so then, so the Tibetan, when they say rang, they don't understand that to mean the self, so to speak. Yeah. But so then the way it's often translated into English is that like naturally in itself, so that we kind of have a self there, but it's not really meant with as the I self, but it means in itself, itself as in in naturally in itself on its own, but it doesn't really mean the self as in I. I do have 2 more questions on the Zoom, or do you want to have another audience question here? Oh, actually, I have 3 more questions in the Zoom.
Okay.
So, Zoom question. A follow-up to yesterday's question on Milarepa students who drank beer. Even if these students were not ordained, were they not likely to be lay practitioners who had taken the 5 pratimoksha vows, which would also require them to refrain from drinking beer? Konsa Kenyan don't come into it, konsa Brahman
이나 제일 내조치를 쇼네 창통도 지치향도 내조를 지도서라
이제 잡아서 된서라 담보 잡아
내조치 쇼네 창통도 지도디나 내조 잡아 지요 삼아야
담보 konsa 잡아라 되게 제일 잡아 말해라
예사래
오케이
텐류라스 코난 배잖아요 메레키디 고몸나요로 담보 다 빠져봐도 잡아서 당을 이제 치요로다 되지 다자지 지마티 다 바치 당송한테 또 못 당송 提讲了对工作当下的你嘛，超把中国的做把讲看，他说，那就是企业的时候，那强迫迫切的讲的，给些他罗的劳动者被控制啥的，也是俺做点把一个的后事，这样的，他就是老在工作比较超把亲密嘛，一般的。
Tini ina kodi draba mena yang koran so di kana kinyen gi tomba mende.
这俺好看到，但俺好看说，这当的话，人家都把人拿的，强的你怕工资早晚人老有了，强这当的是让通穷嘛，嘛的，人那他粗心的，这热嘛是的，在说粗心，好像在粗啊，这个钱的毛包在点，好像在收过了旧的，我等于是偏向那小的话，这就这粗啊，老有嘛话下当的，我听没对现在啊，等于在这是偏向于这个的吧，没哪里把强的是通路啊，没话了，没话的毛毛通路才的。
Okay. So in the text, and now that's the 100,000 songs of Milarepa. In that text, it does say that so there were those three geshes that challenged Milarepa in debate, and at that time they were monks, and then later they became Milarepa's disciples, and then there was this party, this celebration. And then they came as yogis. So in other words, we can imply that they were no longer monks, and they were drinking beer. Those former monks, now turned yogis, were drinking beer at that party, and the geshe, the higher geshe Dalo and Lodun were upset about that because they thought they are bringing down the teachings. So then regarding the pratimoksha vow question, even if they're lay people and so on. So of course, when we take the pratimoksha vow, it is said that alcohol is the root of all wrong action. And generally, we shouldn't really drink alcohol. But the point of saying that is really, it's about being drunk. When we get drunk and we are intoxicated, intoxication is really the root of all wrong acts. So the question is, were they drunk or not drunk, really? And so if they're a real yogi, they wouldn't get drunk. So then it also wouldn't be really harmful. And also it could actually, especially in that time and context, it could have been something nourishing for them, because during that time they didn't really have a lot of food, and beer was also considered actually something like food, nutrition. It was very nutritional, actually. And so Milarepa actually also drank a little bit of beer. And as we know, Marpa drank a whole lot of beer.
就当时抢高压做的时候吧，抢高压做或者是抢在通卡里的话，没去，这里康就忙就去，有的忙不说个拉是，他说在他家还在娘俩吃的呀，还没吃送的拉是，他起码娘俩吃的呀，刚才考过天律，提高学了下子，他做新把是错讲做讲着的，真的在心头呢错也搞晓得有嘛把子，这个那叫娘俩要我的这那错我呢就叫出个了，都是叫他们呢。
And so we should understand the reason why drinking of alcohol is prohibited. It's because when we get drunk, we become unmindful and heedless. And then we do all sorts of things that may create a lot of trouble. And then we cannot practice because we are not mindful at all. So that's why it is prohibited. It is generally said that one should be moderate about anything. And if it is drunk, if you drink it in moderation, it's actually not necessarily prohibited. And a yogin who has really good practice, for example, they may be even able to transform the alcohol that they drank. Another question. Let's see. If I understood Rinpoche's answer correctly, that having realized the ultimate nature of one's mind is not a license for us to break our vows, then, okay, I guess we have answered this question already now. The next question is, I was wondering what is the difference between meditating on the luminosity of the mind in the dream state and clear light meditation? Is clear light meditation only during the stages of death in the bardo? Gom se di öse gom se a di dang Then the difference between after milam nangi userva milam nangi use gom seati tang then chitang use gom seati rva
Malam nalo se kom sen kanar.
luminosity of the mind in the dream state machine milam use song is ra milam use tang chitang use gom seati ram di kiba kare yoris pena dinnerves chitang use gom seati towo chive kapladeni pardo nangla gogo es teni milam use tani tanda kaplarwe dinnerve yana kiba kare res
단 만나 와세세 믹스 만나 와세세 자 요즘 맞지 단 만나 공야 제 요래 대 와세 공야 또 니강 공야로 같이 다 저당 와세도 돈다 찾아 친구로 와 찾아 친구 공난데 교래 되네 다 나도 냠냐 가래 지나 저당 집에 가는 거 교래 대 만남 터도 대 냠냐 치디나 다 만남지만 주류는 뭐 또 냠냐 치디나 대 집에 내 가라 제 과도 강제 주류 주마 만남다 제 과도 투나서 하고도 야我陈主任有啥的话，我他其实我现在呢，他在我现忙这些，他叫在进步，过去拖了，我现在有做了，他的那些那看了，发都谈不了，这刚才我现忙这些，他的光的我现他叫在进步了，光的那了，的光的那个我现在当，但个让一个西个现在有啥的，听你不，把做我些，那我现忙这些，他发都就没有上进这些，在老学了吧。这是第一个，但是就没那么我写成了，他没那么讲，没那么仔细的就，我是讲样的，我是给了我同志，他可能你看看的是去给我，这当你对人家去的。
应该过了que niam dora
你讲了，他这种人家去的，你可人家去头大给我，但你讲的写出来去过说，这是真写的，这是学清不明，这老有嘛来着。
Okay, so so the luminosity of the dream state. So first of all, just since you mentioned luminosity and clear light in one sentence, just to clarify, this is one word in Tibetan, and sometimes it's translated as luminosity, sometimes as clear light. So let's just call it luminosity for now. So the luminosity of the dream state, and then there is the luminosity meditation. Yeah. And so the luminosity of the dream, so there's no, we don't usually call it the practicing luminosity of the dream. Practicing luminosity usually happens when we are in a deep sleep state, which is a very advanced practice. And so that luminosity in any context actually is Mahamudra. So what we mean by saying luminosity is really Mahamudra. And then any of these practices are meant for the stages of death, and then also the part that we need any of these different practices, like we practice the dream yoga, or we practice the illusory body, we practice luminosity and so on. It's all what we need for death and after death, because it will help us to recognize the confused perceptions that will arise in the bardo and also in the death process. And so there is this term called the meeting of the mother and child clear light or luminosity, meeting of mother and child luminosity. So after you have died and you come to the first bardo stage, so there is the mother and the child luminosity. The mother or the child luminosity is the luminosity of your path, meaning that what you have practiced while you were alive, the luminosity, the meditation that you have done, that's the luminosity, the childlike luminosity. And then there is this natural, innate luminosity that fundamentally is your nature. And that's the mother luminosity. And so at the time, if you have practice, then those two, it's that they meet. They're actually not two, but what you learned on the path, in other words, the luminosity that you trained in, will then recognize the innate luminosity of the mind. And so what you learned and what you really are becomes one then. And that is called attaining enlightenment in the Dharmakaya of the death. And so then, then after that, Rupert said, we sometimes do refer to the dream, the luminosity in the dream, actually. But what we mean here is more that you recognize that you are in the dream state. So it's maybe a different kind of connotation here. So you know that you're dreaming, and that's what we call the luminosity of the dream. But actually, the real luminosity practice is actually practice in the deep sleep state. And that is not very easy at all. As it requires really advanced levels of practice and really powerful mindfulness.
好，等他结束行动，我就这个这个怎么插中哎？
Yeah, in the chat, that's it.
Can I ask a
插
question?
中。
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I had a question about yesterday meditating where the 3 channels join below the navel, and just gaining certainty that you're actually holding the attention there or holding the ones there. And also, like, does it affect how you're gazing, if your eyes are open or if your eyes are closed? I feel like sometimes when my eyes are closed, then I'm kind of fabricating what I think it might look like, the channels. And then if my mind is more empty and I'm just like holding the attention there, but not trying to visualize, then the meditation is a little bit more stable. But I just wondered if Jubanla could give some more direction on that. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the meditation is more stable when the eyes is open to then, right? You say that?
Yeah, sometimes if I'm not like looking around, but if I'm just, you know.
Yeah.
음.
근데 가장 때문에 올라 di 감정이 얼어봐 야 항상 della mi pagom gorova tini lungsem niget ena zongo yorova tini la samsam mik zum samsam mik jegi yorova samsam mik zum be gapla dine chena tini mik pa sar tabe tes kapore hensina di sam kanla kansatik zumara wati cha tini mik dana yang and sometimes and there's now it is about our younger already about that. So it's a question mainly about the eyes, or is it more about?
It's about the eyes, but also is there any kind of like sensation or something that accompanies this meditation where you know, okay, this is I've settled into the right meditation, or the winds are actually there? Because you've told us this meditation before, and you've told me in particular to do this, and I'm like, well, am I doing it? I don't know. Thank you.
The mic tatan chipo yang marim the samsa yang ina mic sena this sebo da like yora ina kare lemna ini this ina yang da pa yin da min yana chima
da so so kare china mai de na da zom na so so kare da de da na chi chi se是吧？可是有那么去对呢，就当没那些拍过的时间多，我这几天呢，就当别下科学能拉我的，每种这七八十条有嘛的是，送的科学能开始先当不刚的是没大的功能这个是，然后这是要光做每种那个功能这个是，这七八十条就有什么的是我想。
Karena ini yang mau di mik pachik shargi yorova mik pachik shaya doa tini samsa di nguna yin da menchi
이봐 그렇게
ta kara mik pasardam na yang deba ola ro
det var mycket mycket så då jag gör det så långt där ner ju så sen när jag till jag var så det jag på då det kommer jag ju mara till kan ju det det där liksom det kan mycket jag gör man det långt där ner och sen där han det gör det
So some of the texts, the scriptures say that it doesn't matter whether your eyes are open or closed in the visualization. In the 7-point posture of Vajrayana, it says to look to gaze toward the tip of your nose. And then some say that you can start out with having your eyes a little open, and then later, once you get more used to the meditation, you can also close it, but it doesn't actually not make a difference. And in terms of the focus or the kind of the visualization below the navel, so here in this practice, you don't have you have nothing specifically that you have to visualize. You just have an awareness where you're just aware that my mind wins, my energy is there, is just at this point. But you don't, there's nothing special that you visualize or try to to create in the mind at all. You just rest there with your mind and energy.
저는 당가도 뭐가 지향도 좋아하는 제일 신토시로.
Let's continue with the questions in the afternoon and do that dedication now.
주소 다시 해도
Because it's time.
야 지금 좀 this dedication. Do you have Martha? Maybe afternoon, okay? Afternoon, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Page 17. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, or causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dhammata. May I in any case gain supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in a bardo.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Japanla.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Aya.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Towards the end. Yeah. Oh, that's thank you very much.